Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another exercise tutorial from our tutorial playlist of Chapter 3 for our Managerial Accounting course, ACCT 428. This is Mohammed Al-Jabir, and in this video we're going to be looking at exercise 3-4A. The exercise says Barclay Corporation produced 250,000 watches that it sold for $32 each during 2019. The company determined that fixed manufacturing cost per unit was $16 per watch. The company reported a $2,400,000 gross margin on its 2019 financial statements. What is required here? Determine the variable cost per unit, the total variable cost, and the total contribution margin. So basically, because we know the number of units sold, once we figure out the variable cost per unit, we can easily find the total variable cost and the total contribution margin. Okay, so the first thing we want to find is the cost of goods sold, and we do have a formula that can help us with that. We know from the standards reporting from the income statement that the sales revenue minus the cost of goods sold equals the gross margin, right? This is a simple formula, and going back to the data, we can see that we have two of these. We have the number of watches that were sold, okay, and we do have the selling price for each. So from these two, we can find the sales revenue. Okay, sorry, we missed a letter here, and we do have the gross margin given right away in the question as well. Okay, so we can play around with this formula and we can find the missing value, right? So if we move this to the other side and move this to the other side, our formula is going to become sales revenue minus gross margin that's going to give us the cost of goods sold, right? What was the sales revenue? The sales revenue is going to be the number of watches multiplied by the selling price per watch, which was $32, right? Minus the gross margin, which is given the question right here, 2,400,000. And now we can find our answer. So 250,000 multiplied by 32, that's 8 million, minus 2,400,000. That's going to be 5,600,000. Okay, so that is the cost of goods sold. All right, now because this is the cost of goods sold, we can take this and divide it by the number of units sold, and we can find the cost of each product that was produced, right? So again, we can formulate a simple formula and say that the cost, or let's call it the total cost per unit, is going to equal the cost of goods sold divided by the number of units sold. Okay, that means this is going to equal 5,600,000 divided by 250,000 units. Okay, go to our calculator. 5600 divided by 250,000 and that's $22.40. Okay, this represents the total cost for each unit that was produced. Okay, now we know that, again, one more formula: the total cost per unit is equal to the fixed cost per unit plus the variable cost per unit. Right? And since now we know this and this was given in the question, we can find this right here, right? So that means the variable cost per unit is going to equal $22.40, which is the total cost per unit, minus the fixed cost per unit given in the question, which was 16, right? So this is minus $16. 22.40 minus 16, that is $6.40. So this is the first requirement, the variable cost per unit. Okay? Now, to find the total variable cost, total variable cost, all we need to do is to take this variable cost per unit, multiply it by the number of units produced, right? So that's going to be $6.40 multiplied by 250,000 units, watches in this case. Okay, 250,000 multiplied by 6.40, and that is 1,600,000. 1,600,000. And this is the total variable cost, the second requirement of the question. Okay? Now, the question also wanted us to find the total contribution margin. Okay? So the total contribution margin, let's write down the formula here. Total contribution margin is going to equal the sales revenue minus the total variable cost. Okay? The sales revenue was, we found it right here in the first question. We didn't write it down, so let me calculate it again. This is 250,000 watches multiplied by $32 per watch. That's 8 million. So $8 million minus the total variable cost, which is $1,600,000. That means that the total contribution margin is 8 million minus 1,600,000. That would be 6,400,000. Okay, which is the answer to the third requirement. Let's just double check if these are all the things that we need to find. Determine the variable cost per unit, we did that. The total variable costs, we did that. And the total contribution margin. So the variable cost per unit is $6.40, and the total variable cost was 1,600,000, and the total contribution margin was 6,400,000, so 6.4%. million. Okay? This is how you can solve exercise 3-4A. I hope that you found this video useful. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to drop them down in the comments. And until I see you in the next tutorial, keep on learning. Take care.